Okay, I think we're live. Let me know if everything sounds good. And if it looks good, everything going well. Okay, so hopefully you can hear everything. Hi, Tiara. Can you hear me? Okay, it's up. Perfect. So, hi guys. This is my first detective stream that I've talked about wanting to do, where I basically just stream me investigating things that I investigate on my own time because I love true crime. And this particular case that I'm looking at today has always stuck with me since I've read about it. And so we're going to take a deep look into this. I have my newspaper.com subscription and everything ready to go. I should actually probably contact newspapers.com after this and tell them this is like a great thing to sponsor me for, since I'm exclusively using their service. Oh, wait. Something isn't showing up because the chat is supposed to show up on the... Oh, wait a second. Yeah, the chat was supposed to be showing up on the notepad. Let me see if I can fix that really quickly. Do you think I can fix that during stream? Okay, let me just see something really quick. Okay. No, wait, that's not right. Okay, yeah, I did something weird. How do I fix it? It's above it. Oh my gosh, it's way down there. Do you see it? It's like really slow. It's really small. Okay, well, it is there, but it's really tiny. I think I should be able to fix this midstream. Okay. Flex says I can edit this. Let me go ahead and edit that really quickly. Let me do this. Font settings. Maybe this will be better. See if that works. Okay. I can drag it around. Is it because it's so tall? The chat box? See, it's just not showing up. I'll have to take a look at it later. I wanted the chat box to actually show up while I was looking at it, but I don't know why it's not working. Can you try typing something and see if it shows up? Okay, it shows up. It looks really squished though. Why is it so squished? You know, whatever. It's just gonna be that way. Okay. It's really squished, but I don't know why the resolution is so squished. Oh! Yeah, I think I know why. Okay, never mind. Oh well. For right now, it's going to be squish case notes. But yeah, so anyways, let's go ahead and... Pyle says, yeah, this is my actual office. I'm in my my special detective office that I have specifically set up for this. Okay, so anyways, back to the case. Dorothy Forstein, this woman pictured right here. Actually, Flex, I can hear myself through your door. If you could close that. It's kind of interfering with it. Thank you. Okay, I have chat turned up anyways here, so I'll be able to read it even without that. So just to show you guys some of the highlights from this case. So Dorothy Forstein was, she was married to Jules Forstein, who is a city magistrate of Philadelphia. They were married in 1953. This was his second marriage for Jules, and he had 2 children from this marriage. Dorothy was abducted on October 18th, 1949. At 40 years old. And the earliest reference that I could find in the papers to her disappearance was on October 19th. And the claims were of her having amnesia, which is weird because she was very clearly from the start a victim of a kidnapping. So this for me right here is just the first red flag in this story as to why he would report her an amnesia victim, whereas when we look into the further cases, she was clearly abducted. So that's the earliest reference I could find of her being reported missing. She was attacked 4 years prior to her abduction in 1945, and she was really actually beaten to the point of almost near death. And what happened was Jules is a magistrate, which is a court official, and it was suspected that he had put some people away in jail who had harbored resentments towards him, and in response, they beat his wife, Dorothy, to the point of near death. What happened was she was having the altercation happened. She was stalked into her home, and during the fight, she had knocked down the telephone receiver, and the operator, because back then that's what would happen, the operator was on the line and heard and sent the police over. And she had dislocated her shoulder from this fight. Her jaw was broken, just absolutely beaten to the point of almost no return. And had it not been for the police showing up, she probably would have been killed, because that is when the perpetrator fled. So there was no reports of the perpetrator ever being caught after her first attack. And that was 4 years prior to her abduction. The only witness of the attack was her, at the time, 9-year-old daughter, Marcy, who was from Jules' first marriage. And she quotes that the perpetrator, as the perpetrator walked into her mother's room, picked her mother off the floor, walked her mother downstairs, slung over his shoulder, said, "Go back to sleep, little one, your mother is all right." Which is incredibly chilling to think that the little girl just saw her mother being taken away, wasn't able to do anything. Jules, at the time of her, and this is something interesting too, we'll get into it later, but Jules was not present for her 1945 attack, nor was he present for her 1949, the night of that disappearance. He was at a political function, so he was absent on both of these days. They also did not move out of the house after the 1945 attack. They stayed in the same residence, and that was on Franklin Street. And I have a photo, I think one of the newspapers here. Yeah, so this is a photo of their apartment where both the attack happened and both the kidnapping happened. And just to give you a little bit more of a look at that, I have, let's see, here you go, a photo pulled up. Oh wait, it's not showing up for some reason. That's weird. Okay, well the photo, I can't get the photo to show up, but whatever. Bugs, I will work out next stream. Oh, wait a second. I think I have to do this. Okay, whatever. I can't get it to show up. But it's basically on a street where you can see the vehicles lined up, and it's not secluded. It's just like on a street. It no longer exists. It's been razed, but just would have been a typical Philly street in the 40s. Okay, so back to the case notes. Marcy was the only victim, or the only witness of the disappearance. There are multiple discretions in the papers about when Dorothy was originally reported missing by her husband, but we can kind of rule those out based on the fact that we have a paper from the day after her disappearance. We can kind of rule those out. But I do think it's odd how those discrepancies are being reported. I don't know if it's just because this is the late 1940s and there's probably not the ability to do a lot of fact checking beyond your central group of suspects, so that might be why. But that is really odd. Again, red flags. I'm not saying that I suspect Jules. I know a lot of people who have looked at this case do suspect Jules. So there were some supposed sightings of Dorothy. A few years later, there was an officer who said that he thought he saw a woman fitting her description in a telephone booth, but those sightings went cold. Jules died on January 2nd, 1946, so just a few years after Dorothy went missing, and he died at age 49. He was found in his home. And Myrna, who is Jules' daughter from his first marriage, who was married at this time, in 1957 petitioned the court to declare Dorothy deceased. And so Dorothy has, of course, legally been declared deceased, but her kidnapping goes unsolved. So that's basically just the background of the case, and I want to look into things that stood out to me. I have like a lot of notes here about it. This article is actually really good. It's just 4 years of the anniversary after Dorothy went missing, but it gives great background into it. Let me just peek at the comments really quickly. Anon says, private eye kite on the case. Yeah, this is something that I had this like Google Doc from a while ago that I figured might as well just make it a stream in case. I know true crime is something a lot of people like to listen to, so this is just my contribution to this. Duncan says, what a detective office. Yeah, isn't that nice? Jake Giddies could walk in at any second. Yeah, I'm expecting him right over here. I can hear the hustle and bustle of my colleagues out there. Irv says, what is it about this story that got you interested? Where was the first husband? I do seem to remember Dorothy Cooper. This was Dorothy Cooper, you know what? I don't think Dorothy was previously married because her brother Arthur is mentioned in different articles, and he still has Cooper. So I think this was Dorothy's first marriage. Jules's first wife died in childbirth, giving birth to Marcy, and that is actually referenced right here. This is like a story about how they met. So after his first wife died in childbirth in 1940, he met Dorothy a year later, and they got married in 1943. So what draws me to this case is, first reading it, I automatically want to say it just sounds like the husband had something to do with it, because he was gone the first time she got attacked, and he was gone the second time she was kidnapped. And to me, this just feels like it was something someone didn't finish and came back to do. The familiarity as well with the daughter Marcy. When she saw the perpetrator, he says, go back to sleep, little one. So there are just things that are really kind of eerie and creepy about this case. She also references Marcy in another article. Let me see. References. Where is it? She says that okay, here you go. That the kidnapper was as old as Daddy. About as old as Daddy. This one's a little bit more difficult to read. So, okay, I think this article right here is about the first assault. So Dorothy had gone grocery shopping, came back, and a man had followed her into her home, and that was about 8:30. Here is the reference to Marcy reported that there was a man with a brown leather jacket who came into the house, and where is it? There's a reference to her saying that he was about as old as Daddy, which is bizarre. So there's different, it's incredibly weird why this seemingly just very typical housewife would be the victim of something so violent, and then also a kidnapping, and then just no resolution. And this was also a huge case as well. If you just look up the references to Dorothy, you can see this. I mean, this was something that was, this was an investigation that happened in all across the years in multiple different states. I think all the way to Florida, they were mentioning this case. And there's just so many different reports about what exactly happened. I think this article right here brings up, okay, that was the one that I just talked about. Here you go. Let's look at this one. Okay, no sign of a struggle in Dorothy's room. With the children at his heels, Forstein ran to the front bedroom he and Dorothy shared. This is reporting Jules coming back home after his political meeting, which I read in another article, was, okay, here it is. So let's start with what happened when Jules reported it. Okay. We come now to Tuesday evening, October 18th, 1949, and the shocking, unexplainable culmination of the mystery. Throughout the day, Dorothy knew that her husband planned to attend a political banquet that evening. At 7 p.m., he telephoned her from the office. I don't expect it to be late, he said. Everything all right? Fine, she told him. Have a good time. I wished you were coming with me. She laughed a little. Well, be sure to miss me. And that was their reported last exchange. There were many political leaders at the banquet, and before he could get away, the magistrate found it politically necessary to talk with a number of them. It was 3:40 a.m. when he finally reached North Franklin Street. He let himself in, and as he climbed the stairs, he could hear 9-year-old Marcy calling him. He went to her rear bedroom, where soft rays of her night lamp revealed Marcy sitting up in bed, and 5-year-old Edward. And Edward was the son that Dorothy and Jules had together. With Edward huddled beside her, at the sight of her father, Marcy burst into tears, and Edward set up a howl. Mommy's gone. And the little boy echoed, Mommy's gone. Forstein calmed them as best as he could, and then Marcy told him about how she had wakened a long time ago. Hearing voices, she went from her room to her mother's. Mrs. Forstein was lying face down on the floor. There was a man in the room. What are you doing? Marcy asked. You go back to bed, he said. Mommy will be all right. Then he put Mommy over his shoulder and carried her downstairs. With the children at his heels, Forstein ran to the front bedroom he and Dorothy shared. The bed covers had been tossed back as though someone had arisen, but there was no sign of a struggle in the room. A small throw rug in the middle of the floor was in order. Dorothy's handbag holding $40 was on the dresser. Her clothing was in the closet. Her personal belongings were untouched. Forstein was assailed with doubt. Was it possible that Marcy was dramatizing the story of her mother's dreadful experience 4 years earlier? Was it possible that Dorothy, shoulder out of place again, had gone off to a hospital? This was no time for conjecture. Forstein rushed to the telephone and called his friend Captain Kelly, who arrived as fast as a car could get him there. Okay, so I think where does this story continue? This is just, I won't read the whole entire thing, but I do want to point out, oh yeah, and the other daughter, Myrna, 19 at the time, was also out of the house visiting her friends. So there is an article that mentions when Jules reported Dorothy missing. And again, I would like to know who it is that these articles were talking to in the first place. Like, were they actually interviewing Jules? Were they interviewing a family member to give them this information? Let's see, where they mentioned? Okay, here you go. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This right here. Mrs. Forstein disappeared Tuesday night. Her husband reported the matter to the police Thursday. That's a discrepancy which we can prove wrong based on the publication of that October 19th story. But who would say that? Why say that he would report the matter 2 days later? And then this right here, if he did report her missing, if they did Marcy's story, why does that first article, where is it? Why does this first article call it an amnesia victim? Was that Jules first saying that in one of the articles too, it says that Jules thought she was just going out with friends at 3 o'clock in the morning. I know people definitely stayed up later back then. There's a whole different way that things operated, but I just feel that is way too, that's just, if your wife was attacked, almost beaten to death, 4 years later, your first thing would probably be, oh my gosh, it's probably the same guy. I just don't see the sense of urgency from Jules in these newspapers. And Dorothy's brother, Arthur, seemed like later on, as there are more articles about the story, it seems like Arthur was trying to spearhead this investigation a little bit more than Jules. So I really don't know like what direction you would even take this in. I also read something online that says there's this blog that someone did about this story, and a family attorney of the Forsteins commented them and asked them to take it down, and this was like in year 2000 or something like that. It just adds to the whole mystery about what's actually going on here. So I don't know. My personal thought, I don't know if Jules had anything to do with it, simply because he didn't get married or anything between 1949 and his death in, when was it, 1956. So that kind of automatically just says, okay, well, what would have been the point of him hiring someone? Because he must have known, I mean, he did put away a lot of people. There's a lot of articles about him tossing people in jail. But what would be the sense in him hiring someone to kill his wife and then kidnap her? What would he gain out of that? She did have a rather sizable safety deposit box, and I think they might even talk about that. Let's see. I think this one talks about maybe what was... So this was after... This was in 1957 when Myrna, who at this time was married, petitioned the court for the contents of the safety deposit box. And I don't know if this says... Okay, yeah, it does talk about it right here. Okay. So Jules Forstein died January 1st, 1956, leaving an estate valued at $4,906, which at that time... I should get a calculator to see like what that would be worth. I guess I could technically, but it doesn't seem like a sizable amount. Okay, so he left them $4,906 to his 3 children. Mrs. Forstein's assets were $9,946, which is significantly higher, and he was a city magistrate and she was a housewife. So I don't know where her money came from, or if it had been locked up until this point. Maybe Jules wasn't even able to access it. I do think that is kind of stands out to me, though, as being odd. But there are no reports of them having any problems in their marriage or anything like that. So I don't know. There is, let me see if I wrote, I think I did. So here, oh yeah, that's here. Jules had $1,000 in reward money. He had put up a $1,000 reward. And at some point, he took that out. He took it back because he said, and this was before anything happened, he said that he needed the money. Let's see if it's on here. Okay, it's not on here. I wish I could. I'll find it. Yeah, so Jules took out the reward money, or he took back the $1,000 because he needed it. So I don't know. It just seems like Jules was doing something weird in which he couldn't keep up with his money. He couldn't keep, like, why not have accumulated more money by then? Anon says, Philadelphia, let's see here. Okay. Flex said, how old was the daughter when she said that? What? Oh, she was 9. The little girl, Marcy, was 9, the one who reported it. Forstein was friends with the police captain. Yes, he was. And this stood out to me, too. That is something that stood out to me, because there is different newspapers about who Jules reported the case to. One of them says he called Dorothy's brother. One of them says he called the police captain. Here's something I wrote down. There's a discrepancy in the stories. Jules reportedly did not come home until after 3 a.m. that night, citing that there are many political connections to attend to. In one instance, papers state that Marcy said her mother was taken long before Jules came home. In another paper, Marcy said that the elapsed time between her mother's disappearance and her father's return home was only 15 minutes later, even hearing the snap lock close. Why close up a house like that if he was making a quick escape? Yes, this stuck out to me too. Let's go to this article. And here you go is a reference to just how many states were involved with this. 11 state hunt for this woman. Okay. So apparently, yeah, Marcy was taken to a child psychiatrist to confirm that she wasn't making this up and she wasn't being hysterical. All right, let's see. Okay, so here Marcy again is saying, okay. Oh, and see, here's another additional thing that the Beatrice Daily Sun reports in 1949, shortly after the disappearance. As he turned the steps, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Go back to sleep, little one. Your mother is all right." He patted me on the head. As he went out the front door, I heard the snap lock close. I went back to bed, but I could not sleep. And 15 minutes later, my father came in. So it's just the timing of that too. So 15 minutes later, Jules came back in. I don't see how you wouldn't be able to. Let me see if I can do something really quickly. I just want to. I want to add this source because I want to see if I can get this up here and just show you what the street looked like. Let's see. This is the beauty of being able to live stream on the go. Okay, here you go. Let's just do. Oh, whoops! I did the wrong thing. So yeah, I just feel that there are so many weird things with this, and if this was just something where you knew the story by heart, it would be the same every single time, in my opinion. Okay, I think I did this right. Let's see. Photo. No, that's not it. Oh, whoops. Sorry. That's not it. I don't know how to get this thing out. Flex, you can help me with this later. But, okay, I'll just describe it. The street on which the house is just, you would definitely see someone carrying someone down the street because it's just right on the street. So if Jules did come back 15 minutes later, either the person got into a car, I feel like someone at least would have seen a man walking down the street with an unconscious woman. But that was just not reported whatsoever. Hello?
May I look at the thing?
No, it's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
The photo?
No, I'll just do it later.
How are you sharing it?
I was just sharing it. It's not worth it.
Oh.
Thanks, though.
Use browser.
Flex offered to come help me, but it's not worth it. I described it well enough. I'll figure it out for next time. So, yeah, that was something that stuck out to me, this particular one about being 15 minutes later. And here's a story about saying how Jules said it wasn't until a long time later. Where was it? Okay, this is the night of the party. Let's see. No straw. Okay, so this is kind of like a copy and paste of the actual one, wasn't it? Where was it? A long time later. Okay. Oh, here's the reference to As Old as Daddy. She said the man who carried her mother away was about as old as Daddy. He had on a brown cap and a brown leather jacket. He was a white man. I never saw him before. She said that after that she heard the key turn in the front lock. And she ran to her brother, woke him, and took him back to her own room to wait for Mommy and Daddy to come back. Okay. All right. Captain Kelly says, was there anyone here during the evening? I mean, before you went to bed? Marcy shook her head. Would you have heard them? Do you wake up easily? Forstein replied that for Marcy, for his daughter, like most children, was a sound sleeper. There must have been some unusual noise to wake her up, he said. Forstein and Kelly wondered why the room wasn't disarrayed and why there wasn't a struggle. Nothing has been disarranged 4 years earlier, either. Oh, and that was a reference to her first attack. Over and over, Marcy was questioned, how was Mama dressed? In her red slippers and her red silk pajamas. The ones she liked because they were pretty. Did she see you? Did she say anything to you? No, she just hung over the man's shoulder. He said, Mommy's been sick, but she'll be all right now. You go back to bed. Forstein was too badly shaken to be much help. Dorothy's brother, Arthur Cooper, a lawyer, arranged for the care of the children and then joined the police in their hunt. By morning, on orders of Superintendent Police George Richardson, police of the 3 adjoining states were alerted. So, let's see. Hold the story. Yeah, and it seems like Marcy's story is consistent throughout all of the articles. Marcy's story is down pat. She saw a man carry her mom away and say, go back to bed. Your mommy is sick. Your mother will be all right. It's just when references to Jules that are kind of back and forth. I want to find the article about the missing, or about how he took out the money as well, but I don't think I... Oh, and here's another one. Newspaper. Okay, so you saw one article where it said Forstein contacted the police. Now you see this other one where it says Forstein contacts her brother, Arthur. Okay, so let's see. Forstein was not impressed by the girl's story. He said believing his wife was visiting the neighborhood. Another discrepancy of Forstein not immediately thinking Dorothy was missing. That plus reporting her to have amnesia. It's so weird as to why your wife, having nearly been beaten to death, your first thought wouldn't be foul play. So it kind of just makes me think the husband had something to do with it. I don't know why. Obviously weird. Okay, so believing his wife was visiting the neighborhood. Yeah, so another... I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions because you cannot make assumptions with something this cold, but it does just seem weird about why you wouldn't automatically be high alert if you said your daughter saw mommy being taken away by someone. So let me go back and see some of the comments here. Flex said they don't know who the first attacker was. No, that case was never solved. And they actually reference her in, let's see. So here is an article from 1945 about that first attack. I don't think it says everything that happened to her. There's another article that says what happened to her. Yeah. Okay, so there is a theory that I'll get to in a second that this was just an attack aimed specifically, that both Dorothy's attack and her disappearance are aimed at trying to hurt Jules Forstein, and that's it. But once Dorothy goes missing, that's it. Also, why wait 4 years in between her attack to try and go back to it? This is okay. Here's another discrepancy with Jules's many different versions of what happened. So we saw in other papers it says Jules called his wife at 7 o'clock at night to say that he was going to be late. He ends up staying at this political banquet until 3:40. This article right here says that, let's see. Okay, so right here. Marcy told her story Wednesday, several hours after the magistrate returned home to find his wife missing. He had talked to her on the phone less than an hour before his return. That's another, like, who is telling these, who's reporting these things? If Jewel is the source for all of these, that this is a Tampa paper, then it just looks so suspicious that you can't stick to the same story. Yeah, he had talked to her, and I think that's like the only paper that mentions that. So I've seen so many crime shows that I know when you cannot stick to the story, you definitely had something to do with it. I just don't know what he possibly would have gotten out of it. I'll go back to the comments. Anon says Philadelphia Police Department is famous for an corruption investigation in the 70s. I would believe it. I think especially back then, it was probably very easy to pay people off if you wanted something done. Tiara is eating chips watching Kite Tales True Crime. Good. I hope it's like a cozy little background for you to enjoy your food. Let's see. Anon says, not a stretch to think a kidnapping a few decades before was covered up by the department. Flex says, are there any other suspects? So we can go ahead and talk about the suspects now. So there is something. People think there is a man who, his name is Morris Anmuth, and they think that Jules had, this is a man that was beaten by police, and the 2 police were put in jail because of it. And Jules had basically given them clearance to be released. And people think that Morris Anmuth did this out of revenge. I don't think that's true whatsoever, just because that is such a weird revenge scheme, to attack his wife and then 4 years later come back to it and think, oh wait, I should follow up with that. I don't think that's plausible. But that is the only thing, and that's not something the papers ever mentioned. That's something that Reddit, I read that on Reddit. There was, I guess we could just go to this. Yeah, they say that, okay, so this is the background. You can see, like, a lot of people like this case. So let's see, okay. A crowd was booing Governor Dewey because of his past anti-Semitic remarks. One man, Morris Anmuth, was taken from the crowd by 2 policemen, dragged into an alley, and beaten so severely he had to be taken to a hospital. Later, Dorothy, husband Jules, dropped all charges against the policemen, and Morris was fined $10. A few months later, Dorothy was beaten in her home so severely she suffered fractures to her jaw and a shoulder that would fall off its socket several times a year. Okay, so I know a couple different places mention Morris Anmuth as a possible suspect, but I don't know. I don't really think that sounds plausible. Also because Jules was also Jewish, so I don't see why there would be any sort of revenge scheme for Morris. It just, and Morris actually died relatively early as well, I think, right around like Jules's death. Let's see. Flex says, bet you he set it up with a cop friend informant. He wasn't there, but someone knew it. Yeah, talking about Jules's possible connection to having his cop friend cover all this up. I don't know if there was a huge cover-up because this case was so widely reported. Let's see. Yeah, this case was just so widely reported that I feel like if there was a cover-up, it was so poorly done because you had newspapers all over the country talking about it. Let me see if I can find the newspaper that references the sighting. I think it's up here. Some sightings went cold. Where is that? Okay. I think, oh, here it is. This is the one that mentions. This is by the time his oldest daughter, Myrna, was married. So there is a cop who mentions a sighting down here. Okay. And this policeman, Edward Shapiro, so this was in 1949. Let's see. One of the main tips under investigation came from a Camden policeman who said he twice saw a strange woman resembling a picture of Mrs. Forstein. So this is October 24th, 1949. Dorothy went missing on October 19th, or she was reported October 19th. October 18th. So this would have been just a few days afterward. Let's see. Okay, so, oh, here you go, okay. Edward Shapiro said he first noticed the woman, a blonde, in a telephone booth in a candy and magazine store in Federal Street below 4th on Friday, and that from her conversation she seemed to be talking to a girl, to be promising that she would come to Philadelphia right away. He said he became interested in her when she seemed to be startled at seeing him, and that he followed her to 4th and Federal Streets, where she stepped into a tap room. He said she entered the tap room and saw her drinking beer, but that she once again left when she saw him. The policeman said that she was about 5 feet 2 inches and weighed a little more than 220 pounds, a description that fits Miss Forstein. He also said she wore a rust red coat draped to her shoulders, Cape fashion. Shapiro said he again saw the woman on Saturday night. She was talking to a man in Federal Street and wore the same coat. He said he overheard a snatch of conversation in which the woman laughingly told her companion, "I've only got one arm." He felt this was important since Miss Forstein had a shoulder which becomes dislocated easily. So that is one of the tips that went cold. There's nothing else. This is like just a rare reference to it. And I'm not really the biggest fan of witness testimony because a lot of the times it is just so wrong and unsupported, and a lot of people like to look into things and make it seem that way. If all of this is true, I don't know why they didn't pursue it more, because this was only a few days after her attack or the disappearance happened. And again, what was Dorothy getting out of it? You saw she had over $9,000 in her safety deposit box, which at the time would have been a considerable sum of money. That wasn't touched. So she would have abandoned her kids, 3 of them. I just don't think, I think that's a dead end. But that was a possible tip that was coming in. Mr. James Bloggington says, while you're at it, can you solve the disappearance of Jack Ma? I do have a lot of cases that I would like to look at in the future. There's another one with a woman that goes missing in the 50s that is really, really mysterious. So yeah, I'll take a look at that one. I don't know if I know that one off the top of my head, so I'll look into that. The Gabriel says maybe a kidnapping gone wrong. Perhaps the husband knew, suspected who did it, and thought he could resolve it quietly, but something unexpected happened. Yeah, I don't know what he would have gotten out of this if Jules was the mastermind behind all of this, but I also am kind of drawn to him being involved, so maybe you're right. Maybe he did know something and he was trying to do it behind the scenes and just realized he couldn't. I don't know, it's just very, very mysterious. Bonsoir, Pierre. Pierre says, so this is real. Yes, this is a real case. It's just remained unsolved to this day. Flex said the fact that the charges were dropped made Morris seem unlikely. Yeah, I've never, where is that Morris and Smith? I've never really put any faith in that Morris and Smith story. Yeah. So here you see she apparently had no enemies and no one has demanded a ransom. It's just boggling. I have no idea where they would have even started with this one. But yeah, so that is my thoughts on it. We can continue to talk about it. I'll finish reading the comments here. Flex said, but him being a magistrate, having such good connections, all it takes is a brute force and persistence, and the truth is easily obscured. Yeah. I feel like if this was a way for Jules to get rid of his wife, if he wanted a new wife or something, that also seems unlikely to me, just because he died a few years later and there was no third wife. He died alone, 49 years old, must have not been in very good health, or maybe all of the stress from Dorothy's disappearance added to the health problems in his life. Gowden says, what if it was aliens? I haven't read that theory yet, so yeah, who knows? Maybe an alien walked up the stairs and took her. Anon says, all this takes place in the age of Cosa Nostra on the East Coast too. Oh, I don't know about Cosa Nostra. It's something else I'll have to look out. So let's see. Oh, Irv says 12 Angry Men and My Cousin Vinny destroyed the idea of witness testimony. 12 Angry Men is a fantastic movie. And yes, I just really don't at all include witness testimony. And a thing about this, that Marcy, the 9-year-old daughter, is the only witness here. But the reason I think she's telling the truth is because consistently she has the same exact story reported, and she was seen by a psychiatrist. I think it would have been difficult for Jules or anyone else into coaching her into giving false information and her being that accurate time and time again in her report. So I kind of do believe Marcy. I don't believe Jules because I don't know what is going on with all of the discrepancies in reporting the way that he first reacted to it. Let's see. Gaudon says, you ever read about the dude with a bunch of money that jumped out of a plane and disappeared? Yeah, I have heard about him. That's a really interesting one, too. Candace is very cool. Hi, Candace. Very cool that they put her dental information in the paper. I never considered how that was done before modern communication. Yeah, so right here, just describing everything that was done to her so that they would be able to report someone matching the description. So yeah, this is just a really, really interesting story that I have been haunted about ever since I read it, because first of all, the way it's described with Marcy saying this man carried her mommy down the stairs and just told her to go back to bed, mommy's all right. That's a very, very creepy thought to think about. That was the last time she was seen. Also, there was, in those reports, they usually say that Dorothy was, that Marcy saw Dorothy on the floor sick, which makes me think maybe she had possibly been drugged or something of the sort. Let's see if I can. Oh, here, mother was lying on the floor on her face. She had been resting. And another one, it says like, she's not doing well. So it sounds like she was drugged, and all this would have happened sometime after midnight. There is an article, I don't know if I can find it, let me see, that says that Dorothy had talked to someone, a friend, on the phone that night. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, and here is, I know this is like so fuzzy. Can you read that? Let's see. Of course, hundreds of people who saw blonde women with disfigured noses or dislocated shoulders report that Mrs. Forstein had been found in Philadelphia, in Miami Beach, in Baltimore, in city after city. Over and over, detectives questioned Dorothy's women friends, reasoning that women confide in one another. Had she ever been threatened to leave home? Had she been unhappy with her family? Had anyone seen her in the company of a man other than her husband or her brother? Oops, here we go. Had she spoken of interests which might have lured from her home? No one could give an inkling of a reason for voluntary disappearance. Cooper clung stubbornly to the belief that she would, if alive, be able and found returned her son. And Cooper is Arthur, her brother. She worshipped that child. Cooper said she would never have gone off and left him, and if she was kidnapped, she'd get him back if she could. By court order, Mrs. Forstein's safe deposit box was opened. Everything was in order, which indicated that she had not contemplated leaving home. And so another year passed, and another. Here, Forstein withdrew the cash he had placed as a reward with the police simply because he needed it. But he made it plain that if anyone could give him a clue to his wife's whereabouts, he would put up the money again gladly. That clue tells me that Jules knew she was dead at this point. That is a very, very just cut and dry. I know she's dead. I know no one's coming to actually get this reward. Another thing that just goes off with me for suspecting Jules had something to do with this. Let's see. After a long time, rumors began to spread that Mrs. Forstein was alive and in an institution, that her family and the police knew it. But the police and the family deny this flat and indignantly. Says Cooper, Dorothy always had a gift of gab. She could talk her way into anything and talk her way out of anything. And I tell you again that if she were an institution, she'd talk her way to get out to her son. Captain Kelly fears the worst. So I think Flex mentioned possibly Jules and the police detective. I don't think Captain Kelly was the one. Let's see. Who did he first report it to? Because I know there's 2 different investigators mentioned here. I don't know if Captain Kelly was the first one, but why would a police captain, if they were trying to cover up something, I lost the article, or okay, here it is. He would be, I don't know. I just feel like there would be more sweeping it under the rug if the cops were involved. So I don't think this is like a police cover up. It just doesn't seem that way to me. I think possibly Jules did have something to do with it. Also, apologies if you can hear my stomach growling. I'm a little hungry. Let's see. And thus the case ends. No wonder writer Archer Winston called it The Nightmare with No Awakening. Oh, and this is actually, okay, this is this like a photo of Jules right here. I didn't even have a photo of Jules. Magistrate Forstein. So this is Jules. And this is Captain Kelly. Okay, so it does say his good friend Captain Kelly, head of the Philadelphia Police Department. Okay, I guess you could say maybe it is a cover-up just because they are friends. And maybe he's trying to just say she's dead so they stop looking for her. I don't know. I guess that is possible. That it is. I mean, of course they'd be friends though because they work closely together. I mean, Jules put a lot of guys away. So, yeah, I don't really know what Jules' involvement is, but I do unfortunately suspect him. I just don't know why. Just something about it. And that's a terrible thing to say too. If he really had no involvement, it just looks really, really suspicious. But the thing that just sticks out to me are all the different ways that the report's different. Anon said kidnapper pat the kid on the head. Yeah, that's another thing too. It's reported that the kidnapper patted Marcy on the head as he walked down the stairs. That's sort of that familiarity that you'd have. Makes me think maybe a family friend. Marcy also did say he was about as old as Daddy. I don't think it was Jules. I think wouldn't she recognize his voice? Unless Jules was a psychopath and no one ever knew this. Irv says, I gotta be honest, she's not exactly a looker. Oh, Dorothy. She's reported as being very, very pretty. I think possibly the papers don't do her justice. Maybe. I know, it's like, this is from 1949. They did not have glamour shots. Oh, I think she's cute. Whatever is in the eye of the beholder, right? MDQP2 says Unsolved Mysteries ASMR. Let's see. Ross says, is this a game? No, this is not a game. This is an actual cold case of this woman who went missing. Tara says, if she were in an institution, she'd be too drugged to be able to chew her food. Yeah, I don't know why this would be a huge cover-up, having to stage her kidnapping just to say that she was in an institution. According to some articles, Dorothy was always fidgety because of what had happened. Let's see, I think it actually says that. As you can see, the first attack left her with a broken jaw, broken nose, a fractured right shoulder, a brain concussion. This is not, and it wasn't a robbery either. This was a direct attack on her. Incredibly, incredibly personal. Okay, here is more information about the first attack as well, because I do think this has something to do with it. Let's see. We'll just start up here. On a chill January afternoon, 1945, Miss Dorothy Forstein left her children with a Philadelphia neighbor and went shopping. She met a dozen or so friends, chatted with many of them, finally tore herself away and hurried home at dusk. A neighbor saw her enter her home. An hour later, however, when her husband, City Magistrate Jules Forstein, reached his comfortable three-story brick home on North Franklin Street, the house was in darkness. He let himself in, calling out to his wife. There was no answer. He switched on the hall light and glanced quickly into the living room. Everything was in order, but no one was there. He continued to call his wife's name. He heard a sound. It seemed to come from a little enclave of the stairs, where a wall rack held the family's coats and hats. So, this article reports Jules as having found her first, where another one reports the cops having found her first. And it does make you think where the first source of this information came from, or who they're trying to paint in a good light versus who they're not. And again, for this first attack, actually, for the people that are saying that Captain Kelly had something to do with this, you might be onto something. I think Flex was the one that first brought that up, because look, Captain Kelly, head of the Philadelphia Police Department, was the one put into what's it called when you are in charge of something? Fingerprinting men went over windows, doors, and railings, furniture. All they found were prints belonging to members of the family. There was no sign of forcible entry. Let's see. The magistrate, a neat, mustached, and bespectacled man, had an alibi. It was immediately checked and found unassailable. A detail of the police scoured the vicinity and questioned the neighbors. There wasn't one to say that the Forsteins were not a happy couple. The police found that in the hours before the mysterious attack, she had done her shopping in a small grocery and meat market. The proprietress who knew her well said she was laughing and gay as usual. Said that she was alone. If no one accompanied her to the house, then did Mrs. Forstein admit someone after she reached home, or was she followed? So this is something that stands out as well, is there was no forced entry for this first attack. There was no forced entry for the kidnapping. Either someone was given access to the home, or it was someone Dorothy knew and let in. But that wouldn't make sense, would it? Because she reported that she couldn't see. I think here she says, okay, I came home alone. She said I was in great pain. She was in great pain and her voice was hardly audible. I went along the hall to the kitchen. Someone jumped out at me. I could not see who it was. What is it? A white man? Kelly asked. I don't know, the patient whispered. He just hit me and hit me. I don't know. Mrs. Forstein permitted Captain Kelly to guide her over the events of the January afternoon. She told him the names of a dozen good friends she had met in shops. She could remember no incident that roused her suspicion or made her feel like she was being watched or followed. In other words, she could tell him little more than she had told on her hospital bed. Dorothy never fully recovered from that terrible ordeal. The injury to her face changed her expression. Her shoulder was never normal. Again, it fell out of place every few months. She had to go to a hospital for treatment. Menopausal symptoms set in early. Dorothy changed from a carefree, good-natured girl to a high-strung woman who seemed to be under constant strain. This she tried to fight, seeking to regain the original character which had won over so many friends. In those trying times, Dorothy's husband was the soul of patience. The identity of Mrs. Forstein's attacker never came to light, nor his motive. So that, to me, just the first attack, I don't know for a fact, but beyond what I think is the shadow of a doubt, definitely related. And Jules, being a city magistrate, having that kind of connection with the police force, I feel like absolutely would have pursued this if he really truly cared about his wife, to find out who the attacker was. So my personal guess is that maybe Jules hired someone, gave them a key to entry of the house. Possibly Captain Kelly was in on it, the police force. I just don't know why. That's the only thing. Let's see. Anon says they both look like they did it. Yeah, I do definitely feel like Jules did it, possibly now police cover up. I've came to that conclusion since this stream with your pointing it out. Mentat says, generally speaking, it's a husband-boyfriend in cases like this. Yeah, I know this is very typical as well, that it would be a family member close to her, especially that kind of violent beating that is so incredibly personal. I know what they say about attacks that are done to the face are usually something that is, there's like great personal animosity there to attack someone, to attack someone's face. That's just something that they say about violent attacks. Mr. James Bloggington says, if you don't mind me saying, I like the classy beatnik look. Oh, this just a little black mock turtleneck. Yeah, thank you. Also, my hair looks like super wavy right now too. Anyways, let's see. Candace says, if we learn anything from Chinatown, it's the bad guys own the police. Yeah, we just watched Chinatown yesterday for our Discord movie day. And was that yesterday? No, it was Sunday. Yeah, and a lot of the times it's just definitely the cops are involved somehow. Ross says, only newspaper clippings, no actual access to police reports. Definitely cover up. Yeah, this is just my own personal... This is my own personal subscription to newspapers.com, which I love, by the way. I would recommend it if you like looking at old stories because of just the quality and the amount of which you have access to are great. But I don't... How would I even look up police reports? If you tell me how, I will actually do that. I wasn't able to find anything on my own. But if there is a site for that, definitely let me know, so I can do that in the future. Yeah, so unfortunately this isn't something that I can say, oh yeah, we figured it out. This is just something I do on my own. Like, I had put all this together before I'd done my stream, just because I like investigating things. But let's see, I think this is article, yeah, this is, we've already looked at this article. Yeah, unfortunately, this isn't going to be something where I can say, I know what happened. This is just going over something that I could kind of kick ideas off with the chat and come to a sort of more narrowed idea of what I think. But yeah, so based on after this chat, I think Jules was involved with this somehow. I don't know for what motivation. There are no articles that report that he and Dorothy had a tumultuous marriage. There was no money involved. He obviously didn't touch her safe deposit box. I don't know if they got into a row about something and he just wanted her out of the picture, but I do think her husband was involved, and now I possibly think the cops were also involved protecting him. Ross says, my mom used to work for a PD when she was young. That's where she learned the only difference between the keeper and the kept is who holds the key. MDQP says, do you have a bullet point list of elements that led you to believe your theory as well as possible counterpoints? How did you get interested in this case? I don't have like a really set, organized list about what led me to think. This is just, I mean, I guess if you want, this is the facts of the case. What interested me about this case was just the first time I heard it, I thought it was really creepy how the kidnapper engages with her daughter and says, mommy's sleeping, she'll be all right, and that's the last time. It's just a creepy story in general, and the fact that they were never, that it was never solved. And this poor woman, who knows what on earth may have happened to her. The reports of her running away, starting a new life, I think that is just fanciful thinking. I believe her brother, Arthur Cooper, when he talks about how Dorothy would have never left her son, I would be more willing to think that he's correct. Dorothy wouldn't have ran away. I think that was maybe just a story that is just wishful thinking. Let's just hope that Dorothy arranged all of this. She wanted out and she got out, but unfortunately, she was most likely murdered. But I'm just curious about it because it remains unsolved. So there's no real thing that personally drew me to it other than the weird story about how it was reported. So the reason that I think, just in conclusion while we wrap this up, the reason that I now think that her husband was involved was because of the first time she was attacked in 1945. Nothing ever became of that. Her husband is a very powerful politician, very close to the police, could have gotten answers, and didn't, and the case went cold. It was a very personal attack, no sign of forced entry. And they stayed in that house. I feel like Jules would have moved if something like that happened, if his wife was almost killed in that house, but they stayed in that house. And so 5 years later, 1949, when she is kidnapped, his thoughts don't immediately go to, oh, maybe this is related to what happened to her. It's maybe she was visiting friends. Maybe she has amnesia. Oh, I think my daughter's making that up. Those were his first reactions. Doesn't sound like the sort of man who was concerned about his wife. So that just naturally makes me think he had something to do with it. Pyle says, buy subscription newspapers.com. Use the coupon code KiteTales. No joke. I'm going to contact newspapers.com after this and say, hey, I just gave you guys a ton of free advertisement and bragged about you for an hour. Hook me up with something. Ross Wolf says, Kite's bedroom walls full of cork boards and yarn. Yeah, that's pretty much what this Google Doc is. In the future, if I do these streams, I will organize it a little better. This was just my own personal thing that I didn't really prepare. I wanted to do this to see if this is something that people would be interested in joining for. I appreciate all of the comments that have pointed me in a different direction and brought things up for me as well. And I just think true crime is something that is really popular right now. I've always liked true crime, and there are a lot of amateur sleuths out there. So if you guys know the story about the Golden Case Killer, who was just this horrific murderer and rapist in California that was caught years later thanks to DNA testing, Michelle McNamara, who was the late wife of Peyton Oswald, was just an amateur sleuth detective, and she really honed in on making big advancements in finding out who the Golden State Killer was. She was the one that actually termed the name for him, and she was just an amateur sleuth. And there's a huge community of people who do this, and you can see I showed you the screen or the web page for Reddit True Crime. There's forum boards and everything like that. So I said it'd be fun if I did a live stream. So in the future, if you have any suggestions for me to better organize, or if I can get my hand on police reports, that would be incredible. But for right now, this is my little comfy setup. Irv says, we may not be able to solve the case, but we could totally solve that crossword puzzle. What crossword puzzle are you guys referencing? Where was it? It was somewhere on one of these articles. Just close out of that. That's somewhere. Which one? Oh, this one. You guys want to solve this crossword puzzle? I will just screenshot it and print it to the Discord if you would like to do that. I can do that for you. I'll do that. I'll screenshot, I'll post in the Discord. Also, I do have a Discord server. If you want a link to it, just let me know. I think most of you might already be in there. Candace says amnesia is a bizarre assumption to make. Yeah, that was the first, this is the first reference to her going missing is the amnesia. And I totally agree with you. I think this is the most bizarre thing to think. Yeah, I don't know why that would be the first thing he would go to, unless that was the story he first tried to get away with, and then they further looked into it, and then he decided, okay, now I'm going to be honest about Marcy, or he couldn't contain Marcy, or Marcy's testimony about seeing her mother somehow got out. So you're right. That's another thing that's just really bizarre about it. Ross says, I'd be down for something like this. Sorry I missed most of it. Thanks, Ross, for joining. And thank you, everyone. Candace Irv, Pyle, Mentats, Flex, Tiara, everyone who's in chat right now, just hanging out. Thank you for talking about it. Yeah, I plan on doing this more often as well. So please send me stories that you think would be good to cover as a group that I can research. I will fix the layout too and make it a little bit more presentable. Let's see. Ross Wolf said, did you hear about a guy who wrote an algorithm that can detect serial murderers and found tons more than the FBI knows about? Because the murders happen in different jurisdictions and haven't been connected yet. When you tried to bring it up to local paths, they weren't interested. Wow. No, I did not hear about that. I know jurisdiction overlap is a huge, or, the ability of them not working together is a huge thing that has stood in the way of solving crime in the past. I think it's a little bit better now with social media. It's hard to really hide things, but that's really interested. Athelia Observer says it's possible might be some cases out there that go under the radar, don't get detected involving foul play. I think this one is one that is constantly referenced as foul play. Actually, I know in some of them it says that foul play is suspected. But, there you go. Oh, and this is just declaring her deceased in 1947. And that was so that her daughter, well, Jules' daughter from his first marriage at the time would be able to handle the estates. Yeah, so I'm probably going to wrap this up now because I think I've came to the end of what I can personally look into. But my conclusion for this stream is that I do think that Jules had something to do with it, or knew, or did not pursue it, or was somehow complacent. I don't know if he himself was the one who did the first attack, or if he was the one who kidnapped her. I also don't know. I mean, he could have possibly been involved that way, but the newspapers do say that he does have alibis for both the attack and for her disappearance. So, yeah, but that is the conclusion that I am going to personally say is I think her husband had something to do with it, that he was working with someone, and his buddies in the police force were complacent in covering up or not pursuing it, or leaving out the ways in which because in none of the papers did I ever find that Jules was suspected or interrogated or anything like that. It was Jules had an alibi. He was at the political party. Also, another thing, he made sure he was absent for both the night of the attack and the kidnapping as well. So he had alibis. It just feels so planned and staged and premeditated, and it's really, really sad. But there's just no way to know what happened. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thanks so much for hanging out. I'll probably go ahead and end now, and like I said, link me any stories that you think would be good for us to go over in the future, and I will see you in the future. And also, if this is a good time as well, let me know, because this time works for me. I know it's kind of like in the middle of the day for a lot of people, but yeah, I'll probably play around with that. All right, Duncan says fun stream. Thank you. Yeah, this was fun. I really liked it. I will do it again. So, all right, guys, I'll see you